This video is designed to familiarize you with states, which is an area that you'll find down here. We spent the last video looking at some of the functionality available to you in the timeline area down here. By clicking on states, we get to a whole other area. And we did talk about states in one of the earlier videos, but I wanted to create a separate one in case you wanted to come back and look a little bit more closely and to talk a little bit about what it means to create different states, because it might get you thinking about how you want to do other things or modify things. So I think it's a good opportunity to look at some of these functionality things that make Articulate fun. So I have these things grouped, which I don't think we've spoken about yet. So I'm just going to quickly ungroup that so that we can look at just this image right here. And these are graphics that I actually built in another program and I imported in. So I created in that program 3 different images. I created a normal, I created a different image so that when the mouse or the cursor is over this image, when a student or an end user is looking at the program, it does a little bit of something that's exciting. And then after somebody has reviewed the slide that this button links to and comes back to the screen, it's going to change the state to visited so that there's a visual cue for students as to which ones they've completed. Now there's also some triggers that are going to be used along the way, but today let's just talk about building in the button states. So I've already created a new slide over here just to have a little playroom here. So we're just going to do a very simple thing. Let's insert a shape to be our basic button. And as you'll notice, as I built this down here, it already comes up and the default state is normal. But let's say we want to do that same kind of idea of creating a hover and a visited state. So what we're going to do down here is click Edit States, and you'll see that we get a few different things here. It tells us what object we're editing on. So really quick, if we pop back over here to Timeline, there's Rectangle 1. That's the name of this thing. So if I change this over here to Button 1 and come back over here to States, you're going to see that it updates over here as well. So editing states. We have a couple of new tools right here. So this is Articulate Storylines, a little icon that they use all the time for creating new things or copying things. We see the same icons over here in the trigger panel. We see the same things over here in slide layers. So they repeat some of the same images. So you have just kind of that knowledge base. So here's our normal. So let's say we want to do something glitzy for the hover. So we're going to add a new state by clicking New State, and we can create a name for a state or we can use one of these onboard ones. So let's choose hover because that's a standard industry term. We'll call it hover. And now what we can do is we can modify that. So if we were using pictures, what we could do is just import a new picture and put it on top, and that would be done. But right now we're doing this, so let's add a glow here. Let's do a purple glow. It's actually not a lot of contrast, so let's pick this nice green glow. So now we have a hover state, and let's add a visited state now too. So here's clicking New State. We're clicking Visited. We're going to do Add, and maybe for visited, it's just going to be this very bright orange square. And we can see what these things look like. And when we're done tweaking these and making them how we want them, we can click Done Editing States, and we can test what that looks like very quickly. Sometimes this is good. So like in the buttons on this side, because they were actually 3 different images that came over, making sure that they're exactly in the right space is important. And this is a good thing to preview. Sometimes you'll find stuff that jumps around and you have to nudge things into place. But let's go back to our slide over here with our different states. Now, you can also decide which the original state is going to be. So the initial state or the default state is always going to default back to normal. And I'm not quite sure when you might want to do these things. Okay, so here's one. So hidden state means that there's nothing there to be visible. And we do use that a couple of places along the way in Party Science and SPARC where we don't want the student to have access to the continue button. Like in this case, our next button down here, let's see here, next button, and we click states. It's originally turned off to what would be an HTML5 language, a disabled state, so it's not available to the user. And we literally just removed the graphic And after all of these things are clicked, we have a trigger over here that says you can turn the next button to normal after all of these other conditions are met. And that's a conversation for another video, but that's one way to keep people from moving through your course as they work their way through this menu of slides. And so that's button state. So it's one way to add some interaction that, you know, honestly, users are used to these kinds of things. The internet uses a lot of this stuff, and odds are good that once you start to see states in this way, you're going to start to notice it as you visit apps, as you start to visit websites. You're going to start looking at things. You're like, oh, that's a state running that idea. So there you go. One new skill.